Hi, it's Chris Titley here, and as part of the Morgans Startup Series, I'm joined by Campbell Newman, Chairman of Swarm Farm Robotics. Campbell, thanks for coming onto the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Chris. It's great to be
Campbell, most people recognise you as the former Lord Mayor of Brisbane, as also the Premier of Queensland. Can you tell me about Swarm Farm Robotics and your involvement?
Well, look, Swarm Farm is one of the businesses I'm now involved in, very dear to my heart. Basically, I've had a passion for technology and agriculture going back for many, many years. After the election, a grain grower by the name of Andrew Bate, lives near Emerald in central Queensland, who set up Swarm Farm, approached me and invited me to be involved in the whole business. So after a few months of working out how that might work, I got into it in the middle of last year.
Fantastic. Can you tell us a little bit about Swarm Farm and the product?
Okay. Well, look, I guess the thing that really attracted me was not just the technology, it's the philosophy. So let me explain. I need to go back a bit about where agriculture has been in the last sort of 30 years. So what we've seen is larger, heavier, more expensive machines that can do huge acreage a day in terms of productive output, whether you're spraying weeds or planting crops or harvesting. But with those larger, heavier machines comes some impacts. You've got an issue now where you've got soil compaction issues. Also got an issue that we use a thing called the zero-till farming system. We don't plough paddocks anymore. To preserve soil moisture, we actually hit weeds with chemicals, keep them at bay, and essentially we drill the seed into the soil, and that way we can get a crop out when there's not a lot of rain. The thing is that because of the use of blanket spraying of herbicide, we're then not necessarily killing all the weeds, and then resistance is building up over successive generations to the herbicides. And there's a real problem with that because we could actually lose the zero-till farming system, which has given us huge increases in productivity. But anyway, that's what we've been doing. And I guess the philosophy that Andrew Bate developed in Swarm Farm is the swarm farming concept. And instead of large, heavy, expensive machines, our vision is of swarms, large numbers of small, lightweight, low-cost machines going relatively slowly, but having all the time in the world to do all the relevant farming tasks. So if Swarm Farm is right, it truly is a paradigm shift. It's bringing together the technology of, say, NASA and the military and the great work that's done in a whole lot of our unis around Australia, bringing it together with the philosophy to create a new way of farming. So robot means slave. Well, if you think back to how slaves were used in plantations many years ago to laboriously chip the weeds and pick the crop, so the cotton crop, that's what robots will be able to do in the future. So it means, yes, we're still in farming on an industrial scale, but we're actually getting individual plant attention. Within 5 or 10 years, you'll have machines that will move down the rows of whatever crop, looking with scanners at each particular plant, deciding if there's a nutrient deficiency, seeing if there's bugs or seeing if there's a weed and dealing with it, and then moving on in a very slow, laborious but relentless way. Look, that's a quick explanation, but it is a game changer because it means higher productivity, greater crop yields, lower costs. It means better protection of the environment through the reduction in soil disturbance, soil compaction, less fertiliser and chemical being used to grow our crops, which is going to protect the coastal catchments in Queensland, the Great Barrier Reef. So it all sort of comes together in a very positive way for farmers, we believe.
We've seen a lot of technology move in the resources industry, particularly autonomous cars, etc. And this is obviously one of the first steps in agriculture. I mean, how far can it go in agriculture, and how big's the market in general?
Well, the world market for agricultural machinery goes into the tens of billions of dollars. I did have a figure in mind, but it sort of floated out of my memory. But it is a huge market, and I guess again coming back to this fundamental philosophical difference. At the moment, it's all been about big machines, and a whole lot of people are actually looking at bolting GPS units and computers and guidance systems and collision avoidance systems onto the existing machinery. We're not doing that. We're actually going again to a different type of farming with these small machines, low-cost machines. And it's going to be interesting to see which sort of approach wins out. You know, our machines ultimately will have applications, apps. So not only will you be able to spray weeds, but you'll also be able to apply the fertiliser in a precise way. You'll be able to deal with any bugs. You'll be able to plant the crop and ultimately able to harvest with the one machine. That's the objective. So if you like, what's being developed, SwarmBot, you know, Model 3 is a autonomous collision avoiding machine that you can then have these apps that bolt onto it, operate from it, that can do a multitude of farming tasks.
In terms of the funding of the business from scratch and the corporate partners that you've got involved, can you talk about that?
Well, I suppose there are three sources of finance for this startup. Swarm Farm, of course, has had equity injections from, you know, the founding shareholders, and you know, I'm one of those people essentially. We've also been able to successfully apply for an accelerating commercialisation grant from the federal government. That took a lot of work, and it was a very challenging sort of process to get that money, but it's actually been quite good, and I'd really recommend it to people. It's a lot of work, and I'd recommend that if they were contemplating it, that they don't get a consultant to do it, they do it themselves, because then you get the benefit of it. And so the third way we're really funding ourselves now is we've actually been able to get the support of some large Australian enterprises, and we're very grateful for Westpac, Adama Australia, for Elders to get behind us, as well as the Fitzroy Basin Association, a land care group, and the Central Highlands Regional Council. We're very excited. We're getting a large technology company who'll be coming on board any day now, and can't quite announce it today, but everyone will know who they are when we state the name. Yeah.
Technology is very fast-paced. Obviously, there should be some competition coming shortly. Can you talk about the competition in particular, where you're at now, and maybe where the future might be?
Well, when we sat down and did our business plan about 9 months ago, we did a market scan, and it's interesting to see what's going on out there. It's hard to know what the majors are doing, the large machinery manufacturers are doing. They've obviously got their own internal R&D departments, and as I alluded before, they seem to be looking at, you know, taking their current equipment and automating it. That's fine. But there are a number of smaller startups around the globe. We've looked at what's going on in the United States. There's, I suppose, one of the best funded ag robot startup aware of is Blue River Technologies in California. I've lost track of how much money they've raised, but the last count was about $18 million, yeah, right. And it's pretty whiz-bang, you know, impressive technology. There's a mob called Robot in the Midwest who've got a quite small machine that zips down the rows between stands of, you know, corn or maize, and actually applies fertiliser to the roots of the plant. So that's pretty interesting. Another firm called Eco Robotics in Switzerland, which I'm going to go and pay them a visit in about a month's time when I'm in Europe. So they seem to have a philosophy that's very similar to ours, and be interested to see whether there's some room for collaboration.
Are they technology companies entering agriculture, or agricultural companies entering technology?
That's a really interesting question, and it's an important point as well. And I guess my answer is I don't know, because I don't know enough about some of these companies. But we've seen a lot of technology, you know, people and companies coming out with stuff they think farmers need. The difference with Swarm Farm is we've got a farmer who's actually developed the stuff in partnership with some universities, QUT and the Australian Centre for Field Robotics at the University of Sydney. They're our technology partners, and they've been great. But it's generated from a farmer who was sitting on his tractor one night thinking, how can we do this better? And he's then, in quite a passionate way, gone and made this happen in terms of Swarm Farm Robotics. So we're developing stuff that we reckon farmers are going to want to buy or use. And when you approach it that way, you've got to sort of deliver a certain product. So it's got to be robust. You know, it's got to be field ready. It's got to get the nod test. I mean, it's quite interesting watching farmers. And by the way, I was involved in agriculture from when I was a teenager. We had a farm in northern Tasmania, but a lot of stuff that farmers look at, you'll get this, the arms are folded, and it's sort of like that. But if they like it, the arms are unfolded and the hands go into the belt loops and they lean forward, and that's where we are with SwarmBot 3. SwarmBot 2, I think it was still the folded arms. I hope that explanation makes sense.
It's a very good explanation. In terms of 2016, a big year for Swarm Farm Robotics, can you talk about the progress made thus far and also what's in plan for the rest of the year? Okay,
well look, over the last sort of 9 months we've developed our third prototype and we've now built 3 of them, and so we're having in the not too distant future we're having a commercial product launch, and we'll be demonstrating to a crowd of invited guests 3 robots working together. So this is the SwarmBot 3 model, and we'll be demonstrating these machines operating autonomously, spraying weeds using spot spraying technology where the weeds are detected and they're sprayed and the rest of the time the spray gear isn't on, as opposed to broad blanket spraying. So we'll be showing that to people, and out of that, well, what do we want to do? Well, we want to do 2 things. One is that we want to start doing the work for farmers. So we've got only got 3 machines at the moment. By the way, they've been made here. 2 of them have been made here in Brisbane at Darren, 1 up in Cairns. So we will be taking them out around the Central Highlands area near Emerald, and we'll be saying to farmers, employ us, pay us to come and spray your weeds. So first customers. Meantime, we do want to sit down with venture capital people and talk about raising money so we can really get this going. It's time to step on the gas pedal. We need to be able to hire a few more people to actually continue the development of the technology, but also start to work with partners out there in the agricultural machinery space and other robotic researchers to develop these apps. I mean, this thing's got to do more than spray weeds. It's got to be able to plant the seed, fertilise the crop and ultimately harvest it. So we'll be working on those things. So we want to raise a fair bit of money this year as well, and we really want to, as I said before, step on the gas pedal.
When the farmers sign up to the product, they say, yes, we want it. Is there much hand-holding involved in terms of training, etc., or is it going to be off the shelf eventually with the apps, etc.?
Look, another really good question there. See, the bottom line is this is new technology. It's, if you want a personal computer analogy, it's 1981, the first PCs are out there, and they were hard to use compared to where we are today. You had to be a bit of a technology buff or someone who was determined to get to the bottom of it. So what we're doing is we're going out to farmers and saying, look, we'll come and do this as a service. So we're not proposing to sell the machines, we're proposing to actually come in and do the job for a fee for service style of operation. We're also going to be looking for technology partners. So for example, last night I was on the phone to a young businessman in WA, and he is in the precision ag game, providing a service to farmers in the West, and he's the sort of person that we'd say, well look, we'll build your machines, we'll sell or finance them to you, lease them to you, and they would go out and get them going, spread the word, and then continue to be a partner in the Swarm Farm sort of world. And anyway, the bottom line is we don't want to have any sort of technological problems here. We want people who are passionate, who've got the technological capability, the technical skills, the patience to actually make sure they work. So it's about getting it out there, but getting it out in a way that doesn't have people going, well, it doesn't work, it didn't do the job, or it broke down, and they didn't have the capability of making it work.
So build an ecosystem, build channel partners, build people around it, build innovators behind it, as opposed to off the shelf, oh, it doesn't work, and get a lot of negative feedback.
Look, Australian agriculture, Chris, is full of cases of people, sorry, I should start again. Ag in Australia is full of examples of breakthrough technologies that had all the promise but then failed to deliver. There are early adopter farmers out there who've got all this gear in the back of sheds that doesn't work, and we're determined that that won't happen. But while I'm on this subject, there are also other ways that we can go here. We've had some interesting inquiries, from people who are in, this is still ag, but it's plantation, so it might be tropical fruits, might be, sort of macadamia nuts, those sorts of things. We've also had inquiries from people involved in forestry who have a need to control weeds but also plant trees. And interestingly, we've also had a very big inquiry from the resources sector where people have a very large site. It's many, many hundreds of hectares that they have to control weeds in. There's roads, there's also port facilities and large terminals that have to be kept weed free, and they've got a bare earth policy. Then they're saying, can you develop a robot or robots to come and do that rather than have human beings running around with spray packs and spray trucks? So that's something I think we can do as well and explore.
Fantastic. It sounds like you need to crawl before you walk, but the markets are endless.
The
you could be a global
there.
company.
Yeah, well, yeah. I'll give you another really interesting sort of inquiry we had. It was from farmers involved in rice who were having the birds decimate their crops. And even though people use gas guns and sirens, hooters, etc. to scare the birds away, the trouble is if they're in a fixed position, birds get used to it and they just don't work anymore. Literally, a gas gun can go off, the birds will fly up and then settle back down. The idea is if we can mount this gear on a robot, set it loose, working randomly, it'll do the trick. So there's another one that's come out.
Endless possibilities.
Exactly.
Campbell, you've run Brisbane, you've run Queensland, now you're running as chairman of Swarm Farm Robotics. Can you give us some tips for entrepreneurs out there that are looking to start their own business or at least go out into their own little business?
Well, I suppose I approached that question with some trepidation because basically we haven't made any money yet. I prefer that we had some serious profits under our belt. But having prefaced it with that intro, look, I think it's about persistence. I think it's about taking the time to get a proper plan together. I think it's looking for people who can support you and partner with you, people whose commercial interests might be served by being involved. So a number of our corporate partners are there because they see the association with cutting edge technology as good marketing for their business. And they're prepared to put some money on the table to be involved in that whole thing and go on the journey with us. So I guess those are the main things I'd say. And we've also from the beginning put in some good governance. It's not crazy, sort of governance that comes with a huge overhead, but we have every week, we have a board meeting. We have a hookup, even though we're dispersed geographically, we have a hookup for about an hour and a quarter. We talk about how we're going, we go through the financials, the staff issues, we do it properly. We record all those meetings properly. We have a governance manual, it's a very simple, straightforward one. We do it properly, and I think it's important to be set up on the right foot because you're watching that cash burn, and that's when it all ends, when the balance is hit zero. So doing it the right way, having good governance, I think is pretty important.
Technology is moving so fast at the moment with the likes of the peer-to-peer Ubers and Airbnbs and disruption and innovation, etc. What are your thoughts on the sector as a whole, and where does it fit into Australia moving forward?
Well, I guess I totally endorse the sort of the comments of various levels of government and people saying they want to help and they want to see this happen. I really say though, there's a heck of a lot of red tape that's in the way. And as a politician, I used to be very much about getting rid of red tape, and so I'm on the public record for that. But you know what? There's a heck of a lot more that should happen. I'd love a few politicians to get on their own websites and try and, for example, try and get the Oz key, to run their company, to try and use some of the ATO website interfaces rather than ASIC. They're not easy, they're not straightforward, and when you're a startup you have to do all these things yourself, so I guess I've been intimately involved in those things, and I reckon government's got to do a better job. It's got to do a better job of the way it can serve those companies in the innovation space. It's got to do a better job in the way that it actually understands that people can't take risk if there's huge consequences, huge penalties and onerous bureaucratic law. And they've got to do something about it. We haven't got rid of red tape. They keep telling us that they have. Well, frankly, they haven't. and there's a whole lot more that needs to be done. So, you know, I guess that's my sort of view on that, and I feel pretty strongly about it.
Absolutely. Campbell, all the best for Swarm Farm Robotics in 2016 and beyond. Thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Thanks, Chris. It's been great to be here.